Hi everyone, welcome to another video from Electric Car Australia. Today's video is the long-awaited outcome of our steering issue. So as our regular viewers would know, we've had an issue with our steering in our MG ZS EV and it's taken a number of weeks to get it fixed. And along the way we've had a bit of a comedy of errors, so we're going to run through those today and also show you guys the outcome. So beautiful day here in Brisbane today. We're down at Funderwood Hollow, which if you live on the south side of Brisbane is at Underwood Park, an absolutely fantastic spot for kids. We spend a lot of time down here on the weekends, so it was a nice shady spot to park and make this video. Well, as I mentioned, it has been a bit of a comedy of errors to try and get this steering issue fixed in our MG ZS EV. So I've got some notes here to make sure I don't miss anything. But look, in a nutshell, it took us about 7.5 weeks from when we first took the vehicle into MG, our local MG dealer service, before we actually got it fixed. And look, in their defence, we did have a lockdown in there for that painful health issue we're all dealing with globally. So if you take that 2-week delay off, it was about 5.5 weeks, which is still quite a long time. So what I had done, I'd actually made some separate videos along the journey of getting this fixed, but it turned in to be such a debacle, I thought I'll can most of those. I will show you guys some little cuts of that through this video, but generally we'll just do a sit down today and chat through the timelines and what actually happened. So look, it was about a month after we bought the vehicle. We noticed a bit of a knocking noise in the steering. As I mentioned in one of the other videos, it was hard to get the noise to replicate, but it did slowly get worse. So on the 18th of February 2021, we dropped the car off at our MG dealer where we bought the car and left it with them overnight. They said they diagnosed the problem and they needed some parts to replace it. Didn't go into a lot of detail on what those parts were or how long it would take, etc., but said they would be in touch. Now, I'd previously done a fair bit of research online, different forums globally, to see what the problem might have been, and there were sort of two options we came up with. One was some loose bolts on the firewall down behind the dash, or another one was a faulty steering column. The service department weren't interested at all in any of the research I'd done or any sort of YouTube videos. They clearly told me that they don't take any notice of that. They diagnose the problems themselves, and that's fair enough. So 18th of February, we picked the car up on the 19th and went home waiting for the parts. Then we were still using the car because it was just making a noise. There wasn't any sort of major dramas with it. But then on the 5th of March, which was 2 weeks later, the uni joint collapsed. So one of the universal joints in the one of the short steering column arms actually collapsed. So I made the choice to take the car off the road because it was unsafe to drive. And we were still waiting to hear back from MG on the parts. So I'll just put in here a video and a couple of photos of that uni joint, and you can clearly see the issues with it. And look, at the end of the day, I really lay this at MG Australia's feet, not at our local dealer. The dealership have done what they could. The sales guys have been really great. We've had a loan car the entire time. However, this steering issue was a known problem over in Europe, and MG Australia should have had the part here in Australia. They should have put them on the shelf. As you'll see shortly, it's only a very small part. I'd say it probably costs $100 at a guess, the cost of the parts. So yeah, they should have had a handful of these over here for issues so that they could fix customers' cars in a short time frame, at least within a couple of weeks. We've had to wait for this part to come from China. So enough waffle, let's get into it. So just to show you guys, the car is stationary. We've got the ignition turned off, so it's in sleep mode, I guess you'd call it. So here is the issue. That is how much movement we've got. So this car is unsafe to drive on the road, and we'll put the total time frames, but we've had this off the road now for well over a month, unfortunately. So there it is, that's the amount of movement. Now let's go under the dash and have a look at the problem. So the issue is that short steering column there. So you can see that's the top universal joint. That is the bottom universal joint where it goes through the floor or the firewall. So it's only very short. That would be about 35, 40 centimetres, 12 inches, very short part. So like I said, it doesn't look that complex. I don't think that would be very expensive. And if you look there, it's actually a Bosch part. I'm not sure whether you guys can read that there. But that's actually a Bosch part, so made in China, but it's Bosch. So disappointing that there's been a problem with this part in the first place, but more disappointing is, like I said, that MG didn't have these parts in Australia. So what we'll do is we'll just put the car into ready mode so we can turn that steering column a little bit more, and we'll show you the exact problem. There it is, that's the problem. The side of that universal joint has just collapsed. So you guys can see in that joint there, hopefully that light's in the right spot. Yeah, the side packing, whatever you want to call it, in the side of that joint has just collapsed. It's fell out, and you've got all that movement, which, as I mentioned, unsafe, couldn't drive the car, so unfortunately been off the road. So yeah, it doesn't look real good, does it? So we still hadn't heard back from MG, so on the 12th of March, about a week after I had taken it off the road, I dropped down to the dealership into the service department, and I said, hey look, what's going on? Haven't heard from you guys. I've actually had to take the car off the road now, it's unsafe. Since you guys had a look at it, a uni joint in the steering's collapsed, and you know, I'd like to know what's going on and how much longer we've got to wait. So at that time, I was told the parts were actually coming from China. Again, there was no discussion around what sort of parts they were, etc. This was just with the service reception, not with the any of the mechanics or supervisors there. So I was a little bit disappointed that, given that this potential steering issue was known to MG, it had been an issue with overseas vehicles, that there wasn't the parts in stock in Australia. So that was a little bit disappointing, and obviously asked, well, how much longer would it take to get them? And they said, well, with all the various restrictions and shipping delays, etc., they couldn't give me a definite answer, but it'll be as soon as possible, and they'd let us know. About a week after that, they did give us a call and said, we've got the parts and we'd like to book you in. So that was booked in for the 30th of March. And what happened? We had a 3-day lockdown in Brisbane, so that was just bad timing. So it was about another 2 weeks after that that we could actually rebook the car in. Yeah, 12th of April, we dropped the car off and thought, right, this will be great. They've got the parts. They said it'll only take the day to install them. And didn't get a phone call or anything. Lo and behold, I left work, went to pick the car up in the afternoon, and everyone in the service reception was scrambling around, didn't know where the keys were, where the service board was. And after a little while, we found out that the initial problem that they thought was causing the noise, and we'd waited for the part from China for about 5 weeks, 7 weeks now, 7.5 weeks, was not actually the problem. The problem was a failed or collapsed uni joint in a small steering arm. That really blew me away, because I could have told them weeks earlier that that was the problem. I had it on video, I had photos, etc. But because of the lack of engagement, and you get the feeling they really don't want to talk to customers. Customers are mug punters, don't know anything about mechanical issues. Turns out originally they had diagnosed the problem as a faulty module, and we'll put a video on a shot in of that. So yeah, it's a big sort of aluminium housing piece that goes up under your dashboard directly behind the steering wheel. which I'm assuming is part of the sort of semi-autonomous driving, so i.e. the car can steer itself, etc. I believe that was what they initially thought was the problem, and that had been diagnosed via our local mechanics and also MG in Sydney or Melbourne. I'm not sure where they are, but they did tell me that they'd liaised with MG Australia. So yeah, it appears that the original part that they thought was the issue that we waited for from China wasn't actually the issue, and it was a failed uni joint in a small steering arm, and that part now needed to be ordered, and that would come overnight. So we needed to leave the car for another night, and they got the part up from Sydney or Melbourne, wherever it was, and replaced it that day. So we actually got the car back on the 13th of April, 7.5 weeks after the problem was initially diagnosed. But look, the comedy of errors was that it would have been great if they had listened to the customer a little bit more. We could have said, look, it's a uni joint. In their defence, when I was thinking that they needed the parts in Australia, they diagnosed it as this big module, which would have been a quite expensive, heavy-duty part, which I understand now that they've mentioned that wouldn't have been in stock and that had to come from China. However, the steering arm, which was ultimately the problem, was actually locally here in Australia. So it was just one of those issues. They diagnosed the wrong problem, but if they had have asked me and been a little bit more open to engaging with me, I could have clearly said it's the uni joint. So they wouldn't have needed to get the part from China. We wouldn't have lost about 5 weeks waiting for the part, and we could have been back on the road. So here's a screenshot of the actual service report from MG. So customer advised a knocking sound coming from his steering wheel when he turns the steering wheel intermittently. They confirmed the noise was present. They tightened the column bolts, noise coming from module, sent to MG. They powered down the airbags, removed the steering wheel trim and airbag, removed the steering wheel and clock spring, removed the dash trim upon removal of intermediate shaft, found uni on module collapsed and causing noise, not the module. Order the shaft, fit new shaft, refit all removed parts, power up airbags, no knocking, noise, sound. So yeah, to me, even though I don't know what those MG part numbers are, bolts and screws and columns and upper springs, etc., I'm assuming that the initial diagnosis of a faulty module was incorrect, and that was the part we had to wait on coming from China, and that the actual part was a short steering column or steering shaft with a uni joint at each end, and that part was actually here in stock. All in all, it's one of those issues. It's just bad luck of the draw that the part was faulty. As I mentioned in one of the previous little inserts, it was a Bosch part, Bosch made in China, so just disappointing. But it was really the lack of engagement with myself and asking a few questions. I could have helped them out a little bit. So because of that, the significant delay we had, and look, the sales guys were great. The sales guys loaned us a car for the entire 7.5 weeks that we didn't have the vehicle on the road. Unfortunately, we missed the Noosa EV Expo, so we were booked to go in to up to the expo and display the car and speak to the public, so we couldn't make that one. Luckily enough, we got it back a couple of days before the Gympie Envirotech Day we attended, and I'll include a link to that video from that event in the show notes. And the other disappointing thing was a little bit of a lack of care with the work done. So we'll just show a little clip here of some of the things we found when we picked the car up. So we've just bought the MG home after having the dealer fix the steering issue. So we'll just do a quick initial thoughts. So opened it up and noticed some trim there, not back on properly. So yeah, that's a bit disappointing. Also had a quick look down here where they've had some of the dash out. Keep in mind this is a brand new car, 4,000 kilometres on it, picked up early November, and there we go. So that's the MG dealer. Unfortunately not much care taken there, so a little bit disappointing there. So yeah, we'll jump back in. There was the usual greasy finger marks on the car, but that's okay, not overly worried about that. So you're going to have to push that back on. And look, none of these are a big issue. We'll be able to just push that back on ourselves. And the centre steering wheel, as you can see, is not quite centred. So yeah, I might be a bit anal, but we'll leave that one up to the wife. If that annoys her, we'll take it back and get them to fix it. But yeah, obviously should be level when you're driving straight, and I noticed coming home it's slightly off centre. So things like that, you sort of weigh up, is it worth taking it back and they potentially do some more damage to bits and pieces fixing it, or do you just live with it? So yeah, look, all in all, it is what it is. We've got the car back now. It seems to be going really well. So we're looking forward to bringing you guys lots more videos showing life with an electric car. And we'll also be attending the RACQ Motorfest, which is coming up here in Brisbane on the 13th of June. It'll be from 10 AM until 3 PM, and it'll be hosted at the Brisbane Showgrounds. So if you're in Brisbane or near Brisbane, come along to the RACQ Motorfest. The Australian Electric Vehicle Association, which I'm a member of, will be there. We'll have our vehicles on display, and it'll be really great to meet you guys. Well, that's it. Thanks for watching, and if you haven't, please subscribe to the channel. It really does help us get the word out to more people. Click the bell icon so you get notified every time we upload a new video. And if you'd like to flick us a tip, please visit the PayPal donation link in the show notes, and you can make a small donation, which also is a big help to keeping us on the air and making more videos. So thanks, please stay safe, and we look forward to chatting to you guys in our next video. Take care.